Studies show that BMW drivers have some of the lowest IQ on the street. Yes, according to Scrap Car Comparison, a UK organization which polled over 2,000 drivers, whether it was the type of vehicle, the color, the license plate, personalized or not, and even the type of fuel were all major impacts. Collected all this data and summarized 10 of the manufacturers with the dumbest drivers behind the wheel. I'm going to share that list with you. Let's get into it now.
Life's too short to drive boring cars.
Before we get into the specific vehicles driven by the lowest IQ drivers, we want to talk about the fueling. EVs, that's right, owned by people typically with IQ of 90.19 based on this survey. Diesel drivers on average are 92.91. Hybrid drivers typically have an IQ of about 93.89. And the gas drivers are much higher, up around 94, close to half. Yes, unfortunately, fueling does make a difference. Even a personalized license plate has a factor. If you stick with a standard license plate, the average IQ sits around 94.15. However, if you want to personalize your plate, it's an indication that you feel extra special, you're probably more risky, and certainly you are one of those that definitely feels good about getting behind the wheel, putting your pedal to the metal, and possibly risking others. And a lot of those personalized plates come with an associated IQ of 91.95. Now, fret not, because the average across the whole globe is between 85 and 115. So fortunately for even the smartest and the lowest IQ levels, they all sort of fit within the range. Now, fortunately for you, the type of color you buy also has a major impact, and I'm going to share that later on. But also on top of it, at the end of this big summary of the lowest IQ levels, I'm going to share you the best, the smartest vehicle drivers that you can possibly find in North American market. According to Scrap Car Comparison, Hyundai is atop of this 10 biggest loser list. And a big part of it isn't just the risk taking. You have to ask yourself, Hyundai's, with all of the problems with the Theta 2 engines, that they've been blowing up engines, rod bearings, people continue to buy these products. Sure, there's been revisions to a lot of these cars, and there's been improvements and enhancements, but let's be honest, they're some of the lowest quality, most problematic, and certainly some of the biggest recalls associated with engine failures, transmission problems, and ugly issues all the way around. Begs the question, why do people buy these? And yet they do. The average Hyundai driver has an IQ of 93.52, which puts them smack dab in the lower end of the spectrum. The next brand is a wonderful product from the VAG group, Volkswagen Audi group, and it should be of no surprise. When's the last time you've been driving down the road and you've seen that guy in that all-wheel drive quattro car cutting corners, lane splitting, and creating all kinds of problems and hazards in the particular street? Well, yes, we've seen a lot of this, and I personally have been tailgated, slammed on, brake checked by people like Audi drivers. That's right, Audi is the next brand at 93.25 is the average IQ. There's a lot of better products. Just go all in with a Porsche. Rather, driving Audis quite often means that people are buying all the technology. Unfortunately, with all of that expensive repairs, maintenance, and service costs, it begs the question why anybody would buy an Audi in the first place. Now, there's some wonderful Audis. The R8, the RS3, TTRS, there's some wonderful cars out there. What about the rest of the vanilla yogurt? The A4s, the A5s, these regular garden variety cars that look not much more than a Volkswagen Jetta, and yet you're paying top dollars. Why? They're sharing the Volkswagen parts bin for a lot of the components. But yes, unfortunately, Audi drivers typically fall in some of the lowest IQ points. The next manufacturer also should be of no shocker when we're talking about Kia. A lot of it adds up. I mean, they're the brother or the sister to the chowderheads that are driving over in Hyundai. Typically, vehicles, you think about the Hyundai Palisade, when there was those vehicle shortages and people were overpaying, grossly overpaying for a lot of those products. We're thinking about some of the EVs and some of the problems and technology they've had with those brands, but most importantly, they also share that glorious Theta 2 engine that's known for catastrophic roadside fires. How about the Kia Rio? How about the Kia Forte? Those were easy to break into, technology will abound, but yet they couldn't keep thieves out. Not necessarily the best quality product. Yes, some people say they're relatively reliable. I would beg to differ, and there's a whole host of recalls associated with some of the drivetrains that you'll find in some of these Kias. But yet, people continue to buy them, with about an IQ point on average of 93.01. Does it surprise? I'd like to hear your thoughts down below. Please do share. The next manufacturer with the lowest IQ drivers is a little bit of a surprise. A lot of times we suspect vehicles that are coming out of Japan to be some of the best well-made vehicles. They're reliable, and the owners know that. And therefore, people that typically buy more reliable vehicles are generally more associated with a higher level of intelligence. They do their research. They do their homework. This one a little bit shocking to me because Honda sits around 92.88 for the average IQ. Now there are some factors. Who still uses valve adjustments? Who uses timing belts? Well, guess what? Honda's 3.5 liter V6. It's a great engine, but still it's a little old tech. It's time to amp up. What about their 1.5s, oil and fuel dilution? How do you get to this place right now? And even their CVT transmissions are a catastrophe. Well, Honda does have a lot of great products, a lot of their Civics. Their Accords are a little marginal. They used to be a lot better, and then they've gone pure hybrid. I'm not sure who's buying those when the Camrys are available at about the same money or even less and twice their durability. That being said, I always think of brands like Mazda on the up-and-comer. Honda, they're going on old school reputation. The problem is the old school reputation doesn't necessarily match up with what they're doing today. So at 92.88 or just under 93 IQ points, it's not terrible, but unfortunately it's not one of the sharpest drivers typically driving the average Honda based on the scrap car comparison. The next vehicle with some of the lowest IQers behind the wheel. There's some good decent units, but a lot of them not really that amazing, and it still shocks me to this day with a manufacturer that has well over 100 outstanding recalls on the current model lineup, how people continue buying them. A lot of it's incentives. The F-150 Lightning is one such vehicle. A lot of times there's tests done and they clearly don't live up to their expected range. So EVs, a lot of the products like the F-150 Lightning or the Mustang Mach-E all fall within that spell with faulty electrics, roadside fire problems, engine failures, electrical gremlins, turbocharge issues, blown head gaskets, some of their eco-turd engines, and sadly, they just don't necessarily have the durability dialed in. Sure, you can get some good engines. They're naturally aspirated 5-liter V8s. Some of their old school NA engines are decent, but they don't have many left. And unfortunately, even a 3.5-liter EcoBoost is one of the few. Ford sits around a 92.75 IQ point, so many recalls, and yet people continue to buy these cars. The next brand with lower IQ drivers has about 92.4 average. How could you possibly think that a 4-cylinder engine with a supercharger and a turbocharger and electrification all balled up into one seems like a good idea when you put that under a 4,000-pound SUV? Seemed like a good idea at the time until all the electrics start failing, you have problems with the tire pressure monitoring system, emergency braking system, and things just constantly fail. Definitely shrinking market share, smaller market network, and clearly a lot of people are choosing to go elsewhere. However, there is still a group of people buying Volvos. That's right, Volvo's the next brand that just clearly is driven by somebody typically on average has a lower IQ. But wait, we're not done yet. The next manufacturer that has some of the lowest IQ drivers behind it is another fine VAG product. Now these ones here, of course, the products are a little bit more price point. They offer a lot of technology, German made, so you have to think that it's solid like a Sherman tank, but no, not so much. Remember the old Beetle? Yeah, that was. But ever since then, things just haven't been the same because Volkswagen is the next manufacturer typically driven by people with a slightly lower IQ. I don't make up the rules, I just repeat them. Problems with electrics, sunroofs coming off the rails, electrified problems which constantly cause shutdowns, no start conditions, whistling noises, turbo problems. Remember some of those engines that had head shuffling and of course blown head gaskets as a result of that, oil consumption, and clearly the newer 3-cylinder turbo engines, absolutely catastrophic. When we're talking about all kinds of PCV, oil burning technology 9000, that's right, we're talking Volkswagen. With an average IQ of 92.25, does this one surprise? Well, you remember I mentioned BMW being the absolute lowest IQ? Well, they're actually very, very close to the bottom, but they're not the lowest. BMW with 91.68 as an average IQ point means that a lot of BMW drivers take risks. A lot of them drive hard, drive fast, cut lanes. Very similar to Audi drivers. Many BMW drivers start racing around looking for launch control opportunities and generally are a riskier driver. They like to rev it up, free rev at the car shows, put on open exhaust. Now, BMWs are amazing cars, and there's some that are actually really reliable these days. So it's not a conversation so much about durability, rather it's more conversation about some of the drivers that actually own them and the risks that they're willing to take. See, while many drivers of BMWs are very defensive, I know I don't mind driving BMWs from time to time, and I've had a few myself, but a lot of drivers tend to be risk takers. And because risk takers tend to be a different type of demographic, that generally goes down to the conversation about why BMW sadly fits into this space. I personally love BMWs. They have great inline 4s, they have great inline 6s like the B48, the B58. They are absolutely wonderful. How about the S58? They are great vehicles with amazing engines and spectacular driving experiences. Sometimes there's certain selections and some of the buyers that drive them kind of average out that IQ. Now, they're not the lowest. We're going to get to that in a second. We're getting mighty close to the bottom, and of course, the next one is a Stellantis-owned product, and that should not shock. In North America, we know they've been pumping up the prices like there's no tomorrow. Who's buying this product? I don't know. But you know what? Even Alfa Romeo, Maserati, and Fiat is the next one. That's right, Fiat, the 500e, that should be a dirt cheap vehicle. It's small and realistically not the most reliable. It also has a sad and pathetic range for an EV. We're talking about a number that looks to be closer to 90.14. This is just a conversation about, whether you buy a vehicle like this or what do you buy. Fiat's typically, the reliability isn't there necessarily, the quality isn't totally there, and while they do have a fairly substantial placing in the European market, in North America, they just didn't catch on, and yet people are buying them. Why? Quality, pricing, but wait a minute, it's that pricing. For a vehicle that doesn't have the quality of durability, prices should be chopped in half, and they're not, but people continue to buy. So the drum roll, please. Grrr. Before we get to the smartest drivers and the cars they drive, the worst, lowest IQ drivers on the road are typically driven by Land Rover drivers. Sitting at 88.58, quality, durability over complexity, high maintenance cost, service cost, 70% depreciation in as little as 4 or 5 years. Why would anybody buy them? So that's the lowest on the range. But what about the best, smartest drivers and the cars that they are driving? Before we get to the brand based on this survey, driven by the smartest drivers on the road, the colors are also having an impact. Vehicles that are colored green are typically the lowest level of IQ because the average IQ of a car that's driven by a driver who enjoys that color green is 88.43, followed by silver at 92.57 and black by 92.83. Now, as this was a European survey, there's some brands that you don't get in North America. So from top to the bottom, I'll give you the top 4. The 4th is, in fact, the smartest drivers in North America. Number 1, Skoda with an IQ average of 99, Suzuki at 98.09, Peugeot at 97.79, and Mini drivers are on average the smartest North American drivers at 97.41, driven by Mini. That's a subsidiary of BMW. So how is it any different? Yes, they're built, manufactured by BMW, but in fact, it's all about up here. It's all of an attitude, respect for the road, respect for other drivers, and those are all major factors in how this all comes together. Definitely check out that video right there. Some of the best cars you can buy this year coming up in 2026. You're going to want to check that one out. Hope to see each and every one of you real soon. Catch you then, everybody. Bye-bye.